that you don't have to choose between breastfeeding and mental health. So if you were to give like one big tip for a new mom who wants to breastfeed and is being told that like, well, it might not be good for your mental health, what is your biggest tip for her to be able to have good mental health and breastfeed her baby?
Yes, what a great question. I would
I'm Jaimie Zaki, IBCLC and Mama 5, and this is the Breastfeeding with Confidence podcast, where pregnant and new mothers learn how to prepare for and overcome breastfeeding challenges without being controlled by stress, fear, and anxiety. Each week, we'll answer your questions, share breastfeeding success stories, and inspire you to shut out the toxic whispers of the world and embrace your God-given intuition to make confident breastfeeding decisions. Let's dive in.
We have Vanessa here, and Vanessa is the woman behind Milk and Mental Health on Instagram. And today we are going to talk about how you don't have to choose between breastfeeding and mental health. So Vanessa, can you go ahead and introduce yourself, tell everybody who you are, what you do, and why you do it?
Yeah, of course. Hi, everyone. So like you said, I'm Vanessa. I run Milk and Mental Health on Instagram, and I'm a licensed professional counseling student as well as a lactation counseling student. And I started Milk and Mental Health when I was like a few months postpartum. I was really fed up with the messaging on social media that breastfeeding is bad for mental health. And I started off helping moms find therapists, find mental health therapists. I like to call them mom-friendly therapists who understand the mother-baby dyad and are privy to those practices within parenting that promote exclusive breastfeeding and can also be there for women, of course, during their mental wellness journey in motherhood and won't, tell them to do things like switch to formula, things that may compromise that breastfeeding relationship and go against that woman's values, respect her choices and everything. Other things about me, I'm a Christian. I am a mom of two. I have a 2-year-old and a 5-month-old. And I live in St. Louis, right outside of St. Louis, Missouri.
Awesome. That is so wonderful. I love that you led with I'm a Christian. I think so many of us struggle to lead with that. And I love that you led with that. So that's great. And so I love that you do this work because I think, one of the things that's really hard for me as a lactation consultant is I want to obviously support the mental health side of things postpartum. I know very intimately how difficult it can be when your mental health feels like it's deteriorating. But I have had such negative experiences or witnessed such negative experiences with mental health professionals basically undermining breastfeeding and kind of painting breastfeeding as the problem and quitting breastfeeding as the solution. And I would say this is a totally non-scientific number, but 9 times out of 10, quitting breastfeeding doesn't actually fix all that much. And it actually sometimes leads to increased mental health challenges because moms are now adding grief to whatever it was they were already going through. So what are your thoughts on that?
I think that's very accurate. And I think this whole message that breastfeeding is bad for mental health really comes from like our modern culture. If you were to think about, humans and the way we've came to be, it wouldn't make any sense for breastfeeding to be inherently bad for mental health. It really is a cultural problem. And, I think I'm sure there's other people in other parts of the world that feel this way, but of course we live in America, and I see this hyper focus in our culture of women bouncing back and getting back to work and not understanding, the rights that they have, how to advocate for themselves. And something I always love to talk about that I focus on in my birth to breastfeeding education group is, how has your birth experience been? Was there anything there that could have derailed breastfeeding from the start? So in conclusion to that it's a cultural problem. It is not necessarily a physiological or psychological problem, but the culture can create those problems that may manifest and may seem like, oh, it's breastfeeding, it's my mental health, all these things. We like to point fingers at the factors, but not the actual cause of breastfeeding being bad for mental health, air quotes, of course.
Yeah. No, I feel like scientifically speaking, when we look at hormones and everything, breastfeeding is actually designed to be beneficial for your mental health.
Yes.
And a lot of people get really upset when you say that, but breastfeeding is designed to be beneficial for your mental health. What's not good for your mental health is unrealistic expectations around breastfeeding, not having breastfeeding support, struggling with breastfeeding, and being gaslit by healthcare providers. And that's the reality that most moms are facing. I would say postpartum depression and anxiety can be so multifaceted that I don't want to say like, oh, it's not breastfeeding, it's always XYZ. But I do feel like I can confidently say like breastfeeding does not cause postpartum depression and anxiety, but lack of breastfeeding education and support can. Breastfeeding challenges with no apparent or obvious answers can.
Yeah, exactly. And that's I think the main message here, that everything that we're trying to get to is the cause of these things. It's not as direct and as simple as mothers may experience it, as may feel it is. And it's the thing, when you go to therapy, like if you're like myself, I do both. I go to therapy and I'm in school to become a therapist. And you learn that people really love to affirm. We have this culture of affirming, and that can be helpful in the beginning when you're starting therapy. Someone's there to listen to you and be like, I hear you. I'm here to help you feel seen and understood. But at the same time, we can go back and we can say, okay, like, what are the real causes here? And what can I do? My mindset and how I'm educated. How can I take responsibility? Take that and put the power back into you so you can be empowered in finding a solution if you do find yourself struggling with breastfeeding and your mental health. And unfortunately, I hate to say it, I'm not victim blaming or anything, of course, but I think a lot of people, we go into things in our lives with a victimhood mentality. This is something I'm preaching to the choir, like something I struggle with in motherhood, especially being the mother of young children, staying home with them, not having childcare. There's so many factors in life where we may feel victim, but that's when I like to ask women, like, okay, what can you call upon? Do you believe in a higher power? As Christians, we can go there and we can pray. We can rely on someone outside ourselves in a positive way, and not feel like we're just a victim to motherhood, to life overall, right? And you're totally spot on with the biochemical, the neurochemical response when you breastfeed a baby. You release oxytocin, okay? And that is how you have a letdown. And so to say that causes you psychological distress, then I bring up the question of, okay, well, what else is going on here? Maybe you have some other underlying conditions, and I'm sure you can comment on this. You're the expert, of like IBCLCs. I give it up to you guys. You guys are so well versed in all of this. But there's Beamer, that is a rare and complicated disorder that we probably don't have the time to get into. But I worry that some women, they just chalk it up to breastfeeding, and they don't have the support, like you said, from their healthcare providers to really dig in, do labs, low supply labs, even check your baseline levels of something like oxytocin, cortisol, etc. We're getting in the weeds, but that is all nuance. And on social media, we're not privy to nuance on there. It's just breastfeeding is bad for my mental health, and I switched to formula, and now I'm posting formula ads because I'm an influencer. And
exactly. And just to add to that, they're usually getting paid when they're doing that. But the reality is, like, I remember having a conversation with a mom who told me, it was during the formula shortage crisis thing, and she was so distraught because she was experiencing postpartum depression. Her therapist convinced her to quit breastfeeding as a solution. And then all she could do was think about how if only I had tried breastfeeding harder, I wouldn't be hunting down milk like I'm, like she literally was in this like primitive fight or flight, just like survival mode because she couldn't find formula for her baby, and her milk had dried up by this point. And it was just so heartbreaking to hear that. And I do love what you said before about, like, we live in this culture of affirming, and it's so important to know that your feelings are valid. It is so valid to feel like breastfeeding is the hardest thing you've ever done, and to feel like it's making you feel broken. That is also valid. It's valid doesn't mean right. And I think that's something we don't talk about enough, is that our feelings can be valid, and they're not right or wrong, but you can kind of sometimes step back and objectively say, like, that's not actually what's happening. And that's where we kind of miss the mark. I think we have gotten really focused on validating everything, and we stop there. And we stop there. And then people, kind of like you said, like, you have to take action at some point. And it's just like when people tell me they don't have a birth plan, I'm like, well, you do have a birth plan. It's just not to be making decisions. It's to let somebody else make decisions. And I feel like this is kind of the same thing. Like, you do end up taking action. Quitting is taking an action, but is that decision rooted in information, in intuition? Is it rooted in confidence? Do you feel, I always ask moms, like, do you feel confident making this decision? Did you feel confident making that decision? If it's a second time mom telling you to quit the first time, did you feel confident in quitting? No, I felt like I was making the biggest mistake of my life. Then why did you quit? I didn't have any other options. That's not true.
Yeah, you didn't.
That's not true. And so I do come back to exactly what you said. Is it's not to quote victim blame, but it's maybe you're not a victim at all. We can't blame the victim if there's no victim. The only thing you're a victim of is a broken system.
Yes. But
you do have the power. Like, it is, I say this a lot on my show, and I know it probably upsets some people, but if you're here, I assume that you would agree. It's 2025. There are resources at your fingertips. There's no reason not to get the information. It's here if you want it. And so now it's about making decisions. Are we comfortable being the victim? Is that how we've been raised? Is that something that we're, and I'm not mad at you if you are. Like, some people just are comfortable being a victim. It has to do with so many layers of nuance. Like, you can probably speak to that more, of just their life and how they were raised, and how they saw their mothers and fathers interact and everything. Or you can decide, I don't want to be a victim anymore. I don't want to be a victim of this broken society. I'm going to do something about that. So I know I'm just kind of reiterating what you said, but it's something that I feel very strongly about as both a mom who has been there. Like, I remember one time I was so sleep deprived and just struggling. My daughter was about 6 months old, and I just had it with my kids. And I was like, what is wrong with me? I don't want to be a mother anymore. I thought I was, a horrible person. And I just like you said, though, I didn't know where to go. I went to church, and I just stood there sobbing, just straight up sobbing, letting it all out. And having one of the deacons was there. We're Catholic, and so we have the priest and then we have the deacons, and one of the deacons was there, and he was just able to offer me so much comfort in Christ and in Mary's example of motherhood. And that was something that it was one of those things where it was quitting breastfeeding wouldn't have solved that problem.
Yeah. And that's something I actually want to interject, something I don't talk about much. And I'm starting a Christian version of the offerings I have. I plan to call it the Milk Giver, which I don't know if you've seen it. It's one of the oldest depictions of Christ, and it's him being breastfed by Mother Mary. And okay, now I see you. It was it was frozen completely. But yeah, Our Lady, you have that one, Our Lady of La Leche. Yes.
Yes. I'm this is, I love that. And so that just kind of felt like a little bit of a Satan thing trying to stop us the minute I showed this on the screen. I just have to say that. So
yes, and so
awesome. No, I'm so excited to hear that.
I think that goes really well into something I experience. I experience it every postpartum. I don't know about you, but my physical mother, she lives states away from me. I live in Missouri. She lives in Georgia, and I miss her all the time. Especially postpartum, call her crying, I miss you so much. And she usually visits a couple of weeks after I have the baby. Works for our family that way. But I notice a lot of women have mother wounds. They, whether it's issues with their actual mother whether it's something internally regarding themselves as women and how they feel about mothering, how they were mothered, or maybe they have like issues with, their sisters, or just have felt alienated and not cared for by other women in their lives. And I think that's a great example of someone to call upon, someone to ask for the intercessions of, if you need that support, if you feel like, wow, like I just want my mom, and that's the thing I love about our faiths, is that she is there for us. And of course, very, very niche into, I'm Orthodox. So the Catholic Orthodox women, listeners will understand what we're talking about. But yeah, that's like that. She has been so great to me postpartum, and other women of the faith who I've helped.
I absolutely love that. You said, my mom is far away from me too. She lives in Florida. I live in Texas. And you mentioned the mother wounds. I remember talking to a mom one time who was telling me about her breastfeeding experience with her daughter. And she was like, she just hates me. And it was like this constant, like, she was saying her baby hated her. And I was like, your baby doesn't hate you. And she, I don't want to give too many details because it was obviously a very private conversation, but I kind of went on to say to her, like, your baby doesn't hate you. She's not capable of hating you. But if you are so convinced that she hates you, I have a question. And she was like, what? I said, how's your relationship with your mom? And it was instant tears. And it was like, she was like, how did you know that? And I was like, because as a mother to a daughter, you're only going to have that assumption if you have that baseline of having that difficult relationship. And so we talk about that a little bit. And I'm not a mental health professional. I'm not claiming to be, but as a lactation consultant, we do get into that. Like, there's overlap that you can't avoid. And when I asked her that, it was like amazing. That almost I want to say instant healing, but it was like that step to healing, like being able to acknowledge that, and then being able to say, like, I'm going to stop that cycle. I'm not going to project this onto my daughter. I'm not going to ruin our relationship from the start. And I feel like, it happens in birth and breastfeeding so early. We start those connections and those projections of those mother wounds very early.
Yes, right. That's so true. And I think that points to the point that you said of, well, I'm not a mental health professional. And I want to make it clear to everyone listening, you don't have to be a mental health professional to be there for women in your community. Women, I have women text me all the time, scenarios, and I'm sure they text you too, of like, oh, here's this mom I'm friends with, and here's all these things she's experiencing. And I view those glimpses, those instances where a woman reaches out to another woman, whether she's a lactation counselor, consultant, best friend, wife of a deacon, whatever, and she says, hey, this is what I'm struggling with. This is what I'm going through. So, maybe she just needs to be heard in that moment. She just needs someone to hold her hand and be there for her and let her cry and let her get that out. And, there's this big debate online of does everyone need to go to therapy? Does everyone need to dedicate an hour a week or every 2 weeks to sit and talk with someone and pay them upwards of $200 an hour? And you know what? No. I'll just say that. No, probably not. For the severe cases, if you have trauma, if you have those issues, those unresolved things that, like what we just talked about, maybe that would be really helpful and useful. But there really is power, Jaimie, in us being community mental health advocates. Someone just there for our sister to lean her head on. And I think if women had that, I think this whole breastfeeding and mental health issue would be non-existent.
I agree. I think, it goes back to 300 years ago, women in the community were helping each other day to day. They were helping each other through these transitions. There was community support. They were learning about breastfeeding from the time they were infants. We didn't have lactation consultants and therapists because there was community. There was community connection. Those things were not needed. And now we live in a world that is so connected and so isolated all at the same time. And it's so it's so frustrating to me when we see like, oh, we've got this global world, we can connect with anyone, anywhere, yet we are the most isolated we've ever been. And that in itself can contribute to those big feelings postpartum, those struggles with breastfeeding.
Hopefully it recorded everything that we were saying there at the end. And I don't remember exactly where we left off, but I'm really grateful to have you here. And this has been such a wonderful conversation just to talk about, you know, the fact that you don't have to choose between breastfeeding and mental health. So if you were to give like one big tip for a new mom who wants to breastfeed and is being told that like, well, it might not be good for your mental health, what is your biggest tip for her to be able to have good mental health and breastfeed her baby?
Yes, what a great question. I would definitely say start preconception, start during pregnancy if that's where you're at. Become educated on all the ways that birth interventions, birth in general, can impact breastfeeding. And don't take that lightly. There's so many things in our lives that I don't know about you guys, but I research and I don't know, like the type of creamer I'm going to put in my coffee, or what clothes my kids are going to wear and what shows they're going to watch. So much intentionality behind the various things in motherhood, obsessions with baby registries, baby showers, all the fun things. Those are all important and great, but so is, and most importantly, is preparing for birth and breastfeeding and not letting it at all be an afterthought. You don't ever want to be in that situation where you're struggling, you're crying all the time, your nipples are bleeding, your baby won't latch, whatever, and you're in the depths of it and you have no one to call upon, or at least it feels like you have no one to call upon, like our point. And so get prepared early on. And I actually, November 1st, I'm launching the first ever resource that I know of. Let me know if you know of anything else. It's called Milk and Mind Library. And it's a complete guide to not just for mothers, but also for healthcare professionals like yourself. Everything that has to do with breastfeeding and mental health, all in one place to go to understand like what the research says, the neurochemical stuff that we were talking about. It's very complicated. It won't be complicated. I'll lay it out very simply. And all of there's options in regards to seeking out lactation and mental health support.
Yeah. So if somebody does realize that they need to find a therapist and they're worried that their therapist just isn't going to support breastfeeding because nobody else has, how can you connect them with somebody that will be, as you said earlier, a mother-friendly therapist?
Yeah. So I have a free mom-friendly therapist guide that any mother could download today. And in just 10 easy steps, it walks them through what it looks like to literally go online and use one of the biggest platforms. It's called Psychology Today, and how to filter things, how to find one that's near you, that has the same availability as you, that takes your insurance, most importantly, even like seeing one virtually. In this day and age, it's impossible for me to leave my house, with two littles so easily, especially if the effort is to go by myself. So that's available. And I have that link for you guys, or you have that link, I'm pretty sure. And yeah, that's
Awesome. No, that's great. So if you are listening and you feel like you are currently struggling with your mental health and breastfeeding, and you feel like all the voices around you are telling you to quit, and that doesn't feel like what you want to do, but it's very tempting, go ahead, and we are going to share that link in the show notes. Go ahead and click that link and go find yourself somebody who is going to support breastfeeding and your mental health. And you can work with either of us to navigate breastfeeding. Awesome. Thank you so much, Vanessa.
Of course. I'm so grateful to be on, and thank you for bringing up all of the nuance in this, and helping all of us, untangle it. I really appreciate you having me.
I appreciate you coming on. Thank you so much.
All right, Mama Bear, that is a wrap for today. If this episode helped you feel a little more confident or a little more prepared for breastfeeding, can I ask you a quick favor? Go ahead and leave me a review. It helps other moms find this podcast and join us in this amazing community of fierce and confident mama bears. And hey, if you know a friend who could use some encouragement or real talk about pregnancy, breastfeeding, and all things motherhood, share this episode with her. You've got this, Mama Bear. Trust your instincts, stay fierce, and I'll catch you in the next episode.